Mixolydian flat 2, no root? What? All right, so, I had a little request to kind of talk a little bit more about some of the other uses for the harmonic minor scale. The typical uses like Phrygian dominant or just playing harmonic minor over a minor chord. Those are great ways of using that particular scale. But there are some kind of under the radar kind of vibes that you can get into, and that's what I want to talk about today. So basically, you're going to use kind of the harmonic minor scale as almost like an altered dominant scale. So let's kind of think about it. Let's do the math first. So basically, I'm playing, my backing track is in the key of G, and it's basically just a 1 chord to a 5 chord. And in the case of the 5 chord is where we're going to kind of use this kind of technique. So over the 1 chord, basically we just kind of play G major scale, Ionian mode if you want to call it that. But over the 5 chord, now what I did with the 5 chord is I added a flat 9, so it gave it a little bit of a tension. So there's a couple different ways that you can look at that. Okay, so the chords in my song are G major 7, and then to D7. And that's a typical 5-1. Now, of course, you could just play the G major scale, and that would give you, G Ionian to G Mixolydian, if you want to think of it like that. But if I want to add a little tension, let's say I want to add a flat 9. Okay, a lot of times when we add tensions like that, and I'm adding the flat 9 right here. So I'm playing like a D7 here, and just barring down and grabbing that flat 9 note. So we got. Now there's multiple options to play over this. You could play something like an unaltered scale. That's one option. Another option, that's a diminished scale, a half-whole diminished scale. But those are pretty, hard scales to digest sometimes. And sometimes just playing a scale that just has maybe one alteration in it is actually a little bit more melodic and interesting sounding. So if you think about G major and what its relative minor is, so the G major scale, okay, the relative minor is E minor. So E minor is basically the exact same scale, right? Okay. If I think of E harmonic minor, so E harmonic minor, the major 7th is a D sharp, or enharmonically an E flat against the D note would be a flat 9. Now see, E harmonic minor is very close to G major too, right? They're all kind of relative. So if you think about it, it's just like taking a D Mixolydian mode and kind of just raising the root up. So it gives it a flat 2. And you get that dominant 7 flat 9 sound. So basically what I'm doing is I'm playing the harmonic minor scale up a whole step from my altered dominant chord. And really all this gives me is kind of a rootless, it's rootless, there's no D in that, but it's basically giving me all the notes of D Mixolydian with a flat 2 or a flat 9. And it has a really more subtle sound to it. It doesn't have all those alterations like an altered scale or a dominant diminished scale would have. So it might be a little bit more melodic. Let's just try it over the track a little bit and explore and see what it sounds like. All right, that actually sounds pretty cool. Now, here's the thing. Of course, if you followed me at all, you know that I don't just always stop there, right? I like to kind of dissect the scale and find out what structures are inside of that scale. So now we're thinking of E harmonic minor. We're playing over that D7 flat 9. But what are some of the chords and some of the arpeggios and triads that we can use in the E harmonic minor scale? So if I really want to kind of highlight that flat 2 note of D, kind of that E flat or that D sharp, if you will, however you want to talk about it, I would look for maybe some structures within the E harmonic minor scale that has that note in it. So the very first one would be an E minor major 7 arpeggio. And, you know, of course you could play it in different positions depending on where you are. So whenever I'm playing these kind of alter-y kind of sounds, you just basically want to be able to get back to the root sound. I want to be able to get back to that G major chord. So that's always kind of the strategy. It's kind of an in and out kind of thing. I want to be able to strategically see where I'm going to get back in. Now the good news is that we're only really one note away. So all we got to just do is go back to putting the D sharp or the E flat note to a D, and we're back in G major. We're back in our root sound again. So it's actually pretty easy, but you might want to also focus on targeting some of the chords. All right, so another one that I might want to try is a G major 7 sharp 5. Now that's the 3 chord in the key of E harmonic minor. So if I was to play that as, say, an arpeggio, I'm going to get that flat 9 note. Okay, and that's probably one that's a little under the radar. Also, the 5 chord in E harmonic minor would be B7, or B major triad works. So, you can kind of copy and paste these arpeggios over that chord and maybe infiltrate it with a little bit of scale too. And it's really going to highlight that flat 9 sound. Now, the last one I would think of it, which is kind of the most obvious one, is just a diminished arpeggio from that E flat or D sharp note. And that's kind of like a D7 flat 9 diminished. That's actually probably the most obvious one. But some of the other ones are a little less obvious and actually sound really cool. Also, as far as triads are concerned, there's a couple of cool triads I could use, because there's an augmented triad in E harmonic minor. You could think of it as G, or you could think of it as B, or that E flat or D sharp note. And you can make some lines off of that too. So I'm going to roll a little bit more to the track and just explore some of that and try to infiltrate some of those arpeggios into my lines. All right, kind of cool, right? And, not a big stretch to go from G major, which is E minor, to E harmonic minor, and you get that kind of rootless, it's like D Mixolydian with a flat 2, but there's no D in it. And, it's definitely something to explore. It's a little bit more subtle. I find it works really great in kind of like a major 5-to-1 move, or a 2-5-1 kind of sound, where you're just only getting that one alteration, but the rest of the notes are basically the same as kind of like the stable, very inside sounding Mixolydian mode. All right, so that's a little bit of Mixolydian flat 2, no root, right? And that's a couple of clever ways that you can use it. So if you're familiar with the harmonic minor scale, this is actually something that's relatively easy to implement into your playing. You just play the harmonic minor scale up a whole step from your dominant chord, or you can think of it as kind of like the relative minor of the resolution, the 1 chord, in this case G major, E minor, E harmonic minor. So however you'd like to think about it to get there quickly. Of course, you always want to be able to get back into the root sound. So a good target note is to get back to that D note, because the D is the 5th of the G. And that's kind of the note we're tweaking here. So if you get it back to that note, kind of brings it back into that more stable sound. So those are a few strategies, a few ideas. Mixolydian flat 2, no root. Give it a try, and I'll see you next time around.